the very last 5 minutes of every listing presentation, called the final 5 minutes, is very strategic. This is the time when you finally reveal your list price. At this point, you haven't said anything about what your opinion is, but the seller has expressed their opinion throughout the listing presentation. They did it on your walkthrough. They did it on your initial phone call to seller. Hopefully this is the case with you, that at this point, you got the seller to volunteer a range of value on that call, and as you're sitting down with them, going through the listing presentation, showing them superior properties, you have a clear indication of what price that they're thinking of. Now hopefully that's the case. Hopefully you're not going through all these presentations and you're the very first one to give your opinion. This thing I'm going to share with you is the difference between somebody who sells 80–90% of their volume and people that are selling far less of it. We've got to get the seller, because this is pricing therapy, to give their price first, from that first phone call all through the process, reacting to price. And we've never expressed, do we think you're high, you're low? So here we go, the final 5 minutes of the presentation. Here's how it goes. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what I'd like to ask you to do is, I'm going to write down my number right now. Or I've already written it down, whatever the case. I've got my number written, but I have an exercise that I want you to do. I would like you to also write down your number. Here's a piece of paper for you, a piece of paper for you. You both have pens. Now, no looking, but here's what we're going to do. I want you to have a hypothetical here. This is your friend's house. They moved to Europe. They said to you, don't underprice our house and get us multiple offers, and don't overprice it so it sits here for months and months and months. Now remember, you have nothing to gain or lose from this. I have a question for you. If you were to price this property, you could have about a $10,000 swing or whatever. You could have a $5,000 or $10,000 swing. I want you to write down the price you think it would be approximate value in the marketplace. Now, no looking, but you might feel reluctant to do it, but keep in mind, before somebody buys the house, they actually have to do the same process. They've got to put it down in writing. So my question for you is, if you could write down your number, and you could write down your number as well, no looking. I've got my number here, I'm going to write mine down. I want to turn them over at the same time. After sitting through this presentation on pricing, you both have formulated some kind of opinion. It might have gone up, it might have gone down prior to our meeting. Maybe you had no idea, but you feel after this that you're informed, because after all, it's your friend's property, and your job is to price it so you don't underprice it and you don't overprice it so it sits here. So here you go. Go ahead, write down your number. I'll go ahead and write down my number as well. We'll all turn, no looking, and we'll all turn over at once. Now here's what happens. They're writing down their numbers. Sometimes they're having fun with it. Sometimes you're going to have one party say, you know what, I can't do this. I can't be objective. Now, isn't it a really good thing that you found out that they can't be objective before you take the listing? This is a way to get the sellers to show, again, we talk about more score, motivation, objectivity, readiness to change, and expectations of you. And the most beautiful thing, before we fill out the listing paperwork, you hear sometimes one of the parties go, I can't be objective on the price. Well, we don't want that person speaking into the price if they can't be objective about it. So we're at the end, and we ask them both to write down their price opinion. And we want that one who says, I really can't be objective. You got to write your price anyway. Please write your price. Put the pen back in front of them. And then we're all going to flip them over. And what's the most amazing thing, like marriage counseling, they start talking. We flip them over at one time. They look at my number. Then they look at each other's numbers. And they turn to each other like, honey, you were thinking that high? Were you thinking that low? It's a really amazing pricing counseling, pricing therapy, to see the two of them start having a discussion. And one of them's going to want it higher, one's lower, and really the discussion's great. When I said the final 5 minutes, it could end here with an agreement on your price. But if your number is different from theirs, for example, you're lower than they are, you have another few minutes to talk it through, to recap why their price isn't where they think it should be. There's a form that we have for you that has three sets of prices. And it's the high, medium, and low price. If you're going to go with the high price, there's going to be certain market conditions that exist, meaning we're really hot. There's one seller to every one buyer in the marketplace, things of that nature. And you're also one of the best one of the best houses on the block. If you're the best house out there with the shag carpet and these countertops, if you're the best house and it's a really hot market, you go with this price. And then if it's more of a normal marketplace, here's the value, and here's what a buyer's market would be. Now, you wrote down three sets of prices. They both wrote down a little range over here. The odds are pretty high when they turn their numbers over, one of their prices matches yours. Instead of you have one price, you turn it over and you wait for the reaction. What happens here, we actually have an opportunity to start discussing that my market value, I agree with you if the market were hotter and if we had a tighter supply and demand. You'd be right? But here's what we see in the marketplace. And you do a quick recap of it to get agreement on it versus one of the parties saying that he or she couldn't be objective. This is a very powerful close on the price. After all, that's the most important thing about this property. I don't care what the condition is, what the marketplace is like. Price is everything. And the final part of pricing therapy is getting them to express it in writing. And then talk it through to accomplish your price that you want. You can go back and recap some of the properties that you talked about earlier, maybe some failed sales. If their number's still going to be too high, go back to failed sales that were superior. We have to anticipate this, that the seller is going to come in high. And because of that, we should know which closed sales were superior to theirs that sold for less, which active properties that are not selling that are priced less than they want to go on, what failed sales that they want to compete with, and they want to price it, where the failed sales were. We should be really equipped for this at the very end. Know what data we got to pull back out again to show them why they need to be at that one price point that you're recommending. Now, if they say to you, can we try our price for a little while? Well, I'd say it depends. It's okay to take an overpriced listing if the following occurs: that they have a short time frame they've agreed to adjust the price to that number if it doesn't sell. And we're not talking about, can you give it 30 days at my price, says the seller. Because oftentimes what happens is when the 30 days comes, they want to wait a little longer. After all, we've not had enough showings in the property. You haven't shown the property enough. We think there's a buyer who is a fence sitter who may make an offer. All these different reasons. The seller may hold off, and all of a sudden you see yourself at 45 days, at 50 days. Not only are they not getting an offer, they're upset with you. So we want a condition that's acceptable, that maybe it's 7 days or 10 days at that price, and then it drops down. But we don't be looking at a month and a half or 2 months, whatever the case. That may be an unacceptable condition. Ideally, your sellers are always in the ready mode. The ready mode is to put the right price that you want at an agent, and the house will sell. Now, what's interesting, if agents could choose the list price for home sellers, wouldn't everything sell? So in other words, there's plenty of realtors going with the seller's list price. And that's why the properties aren't selling, and the agent has no ability later to convince them to move to the right price. So this final 5 minutes is a powerful presentation by having them both put in writing and then have the debate, so to speak, between the two sellers to see if, why is one high, one's lower. This is what's really amazing about this. They were unified on a price before the listing interview, and now they are no longer unified, and they both have an opinion. And that's where really the solution is, getting them to speak it through, and you're there to help counsel them. All right, thanks for watching.